Well, I've got something of a Coventry legend in the studio with me this afternoon. Bob Jackson, who came to prominence in the 70s, has been in groups such as Badfinger and the Fortunes, and even toured with Eric Clapton, which I'm sure we'll get into in a few moments' time. Well, he's back on stage this summer, right here in the Memorial Park at the Godiva Festival, in news which was announced yesterday, but I'm delighted to say he's joined me in the studio this afternoon. Bob, good to have you in the studio this afternoon.
Yeah, lovely to meet you, Graham.
Very good to be here. And I have to say, you know, when you walk through the door there, you have that kind of air there of...
Hair? What hair?
No, air.
Oh, sorry.
Of, rock star.
Well, that's very kind of you, yeah.
You do. You kind of sum up all the image of what a rock star is. I alluded to some of the work that you've done already, but let's go way back to 1969. Tell us how it all really started for you and with music.
Well, I'm a Coventry kid, born and bred here. I joined a couple of just little local bands, but quite soon I formed a band called Indian Summer in the city, and that was signed up by Black Sabbath's management. We used to know Sabbath. This is when they were called Earth, actually. They weren't even called Black Sabbath at the time. So my history goes right back to those early days, prior 70, in the late 60s.
Yeah.
And we did an album with that band, and then I moved on and on and on.
And tell me about arriving at Badfinger, because Badfinger were already going when you arrived, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they were at the peak of their powers. They'd already had some hits, and I just got back from a tour with supporting Eric Clapton in the States. It was Clapton's comeback tour. And I came back. I kind of left the band I was in and came back simultaneously with no gig at all. And I got a telegram. Now, there's a clue how long ago it was. I got a telegram, and it said, "Would you like to audition? Ring this number." And I thought, well, who's it for? Anyway, turned out to be Badfinger. So I went to Denmark Street in London, London's Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah.
Did an audition there and got the job. I mean, it was fantastic for me. I couldn't quite believe it,
What's it like to arrive in a well-established band?
Well, for me, it was great. I mean, I really thought I was kind of... I was able to bring something to it and add something, because on a lot of the... If people know the Badfinger songs and records, they'll know that there were often keyboards on those records, but they could never really reproduce them live, because Pete Ham, who played guitar, he also played piano. Well, plainly in those days, you couldn't do both. So I was so delighted to join, because I thought, this is great. I'm able to bring all that other stuff that people want to hear. They're already on the records. And, of course, an extra harmony. I was delighted. I was made up. Local boy made good, yeah.
Well, during your time in Badfinger, first time around, there were issues in the band, weren't there? And you mentioned Pete there a few seconds ago. How long had you been in the band before Pete took his life?
Well, I joined. The first thing we did was to do a tour around Britain, a UK tour, with the Man Band, a Welsh band. Then we went into Apple and did an album. But quite soon after doing that album, we heard that business-wise things weren't good. We had an American management, a Badfinger Corporation. We were based in England, managers in America. And all the money's being shoveled in. And suddenly we hear of litigation between the record company and the management. And we didn't have a clue what was happening, really. So...
Because you're artists, you just get on and do what you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of believe what people tell you, really. I mean, especially then, I think the whole world was a little more naive than it is today. So we were just doing what we did and trusting that monies would come through, but the money stopped. Pete had a new relationship with a kiddie on the way, just bought his first house. He'd been living in a bedsit for years and years and years. So he'd moved into this new house with his new partner, baby on the way, and suddenly all the checks stopped. And that was the beginning of a very, very deep depression for him, because, of course, he'd written all those hits. So it was a devastating time.
How aware were you of what was going on?
How aware was I?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I was the new kid, so I only heard bits and bobs. I mean, obviously I was part of the band, but I didn't have the knowledge of all the back history. I'd signed into the corporation myself, but obviously I was in at a later time. So I could hear these rumblings and murmurs, and then, of course, my money was cut off in the same way. So in that sense, we were all in the same boat. There was this litigation between Warner Brothers and our management, and we could not do anything. We were stuck in the middle. And the worst thing of all, Graham, is that we felt, and particularly Pete felt, we were unable to move forward. We couldn't just go and get more gigs. We were signed. We couldn't get another record deal. We were signed, but it was all... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't easy.
When the day finally happened, I mean, devastating news for everyone involved, of course. How did it affect you and the band?
Well, it was terrible times. I mean, nearly had a nervous breakdown, really. And we sort of regrouped and all met down at Pete's house, and of course there was just his widow there and other friends and family, Badfinger friends and family. It was a tough time. It's not something I can talk in depth about. It was a very emotional time.
Sure,
that's
absolutely.
really all I can say about that.
Things moved on from that, though, didn't they? And work started to happen again, yeah? Albums?
Yeah. Well, what happened was after we decided at that point that it was going to be very hard at that moment in time to carry Badfinger on, Tommy Evans, another member of Badfinger, we formed a band called the Dodgers, and we did some albums and records with that on Island Records. We did another thing with a band called Cheetah, an Australian band. And then I think we parted ways, but not for long, because Tommy rang me from the States and said, look, I'd really like to get this thing back together. You know, a sober amount of time has gone by now since Pete's death. What about you, me, and the original drummer Mike Gibbins getting back together? So that's what we did. So we got back together. We just used to go over and tour the States. We'd get a couple of session men in the States, but the three of us would have all our songs and harmonies together, yeah.
Well, we'll come up to exactly where you are today in a few moments' time, but I'm going to play one of your new songs, which is Badfinger featuring Bob Jackson yourself, In a Different World. Tell me about this song that we're going to play in a moment.
Okay, well, unlike a lot of the stuff that's happening today, it's a message song. I guess you could say it's a protest song, harking back to the 60s and 70s. But it's really trying to make the world a little bit better, and I think we live in an age now where politically things are all up in the air. No one really knows where they are. So listen to the lyric. I think it's a good lyric. So have a listen.
In a different world, so much we could create. We wouldn't have to listen to the politics of hate. Think of the way it could be. Just think of the way it could be. Well, I know where I'd rather be.
BBC Commentary in Warwickshire. It's Graham Torrington in for Brodie today, my guest this afternoon. Bob Jackson, Coventry lads, and now back with Badfinger, amongst other things that you're into at the moment. We'll talk about that in a few moments' time. So the song then, A Different World, written by yourself?
Yeah, it's one of mine, yeah.
And what else are you doing with Badfinger? Because you're part of Badfinger now, obviously, again, right?
Yeah, it's what we did a few years ago was to relaunch this thing. I just felt that there was a legacy there, and I'm genuine about that. This is not a cynical kind of attempt to just get a few extra gigs. I already do plenty of other gigs.
Right.
But I really felt, I'm still in touch with the families and the estates of the guys, and so I really felt that I wanted to. The strength and material is so good. So it's a bit of a mission really to spread the word on it.
The Godiva Festival then. Tell us about that, your involvement.
Well, I'm delighted to say that. We've been asked to do the Godiva Festival on the 9th of July. So on Sunday in the afternoon sometime, I think it's about 2:30, 2:45 or something like that.
Turn up at 1 o'clock, you'll be all right.
Yeah, you'll be all right, yeah. We'll be on the main stage there, so I'm really looking forward to that. You may not know, people may not know, but although I've been in Badfinger kind of forever, and there's been this relaunch, we haven't actually done Coventry before. So this is our debut gig here in Coventry.
In your hometown?
In hometown at the festival, so you can't beat that.
What does that mean to you?
Oh, everything. I can't really find the words for that, but it's going to be very thrilling. I'm really looking forward to that one.
And you'll be doing some stuff with Hazel O'Connor, I believe, as well.
Yeah, there's another gig about a week later, and that's a charity gig for Mighton Hospice and the Motor Neurone Association. All for charity, proceeds to charity, and that's going to be on at the Empire about a week or so later, with a cast of loads of other bands as well, by the way. So that'll be good. So 2 gigs back to back in Coventry. Great.
If you go back to 1969, to where we are today, right? Did you think you would still be doing what you are doing and what you love to do today?
Definitely not.
Why?
Well, because there was no sort of roadmap at that. Well, there still really isn't a roadmap, but I can remember saying to my mum when I was about 19 or 20, how long can I carry this? Maybe when I'm 25, maybe if I could just eke it out till then. I had no conception. And I don't think, by the way, that most bands of my genre, my era, would have guessed. You could never have guessed,
Well, you've lost some along the way, of course, but you're here to tell the tale.
Yeah.
It's great. It really is. Bob, thank you very much indeed for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you for asking me, Graham.
No problem.
BBC Coventry and Warwickshire Travel.